And the last chapter that we will study is Chapter 22, Waste Management. The case study is about a famous landfill that has been capped, which means it's done and sealed. It's called Fresh Kills Landfill in New York City. It's closed, and they're turning it into a park and a wetlands. They did reopen it for a while after 9/11 to put the debris from the World Trade Center, but then it's now closed again, and it is currently being developed into big parks, big wetlands, probably some golf courses, baseball diamonds, that kind of thing. This is very common for capped landfills. There's a golf course in La Cañada that used to be a landfill. And you can't put buildings on top. First of all, nobody wants to live in a house above a landfill. But secondly, you can't do it because the landfill will keep decomposing and the ground will slowly sink for a number of years, 20, 30 years. So you really don't want to put a building on there that's going to sink. So instead we put parks and golf courses and wetlands. Page 648, make sure you know these terms. Waste, municipal solid waste, which comes from a city or homes, businesses. Industrial solid waste, which comes from factories. And then hazardous waste, which is hazardous. The term waste management means, what do we do with all our waste? Do we recycle some? Do we compost some? Do we put some in a landfill? The waste stream is from source to disposal of any item. Recovery is when you can recover those materials through composting and recycling. And composting is taking basically biomass, so vegetable scraps, yard waste, that kind of thing, and composting and then putting them back into the soil. What is the biggest component of solid waste? Paper. So many people think plastics are a problem. Oh, our landfill's getting so filled up with plastic. It's terrible, it's terrible. Now, plastics are pretty terrible because they don't decompose very well. But the vast majority of our landfill is paper. You gotta know that. It's paper. And you can see that on the pie chart here. And then yard waste, both of which don't need to go in a landfill. Paper can be easily recycled, and yard waste can be easily composted. So at home, put all your paper in the recycle bin. Cardboard boxes, like cereal boxes, all of any waste paper from school or whatever, put it in the recycle bin along with your bottles and cans. And then put your yard waste into the yard waste bin, and you can divert a lot of waste from the landfill. Metals you can recycle and get money for them. Page 650. So you can see here that our total waste has gone up, but per capita has gone down because more and more people are recycling and composting than they used to be. When I was about your age in high school was when people first started recycling. Now, sure, people would save bottles and cans and get money for them, but at home to recycle, to have recycle bins at home, that was a kind of a new thing. So really only about 20 years ago did people really start recycling. And then a lot of people compost at home. I compost at home our kitchen scraps that are not animal kitchen scraps. In general, the U.S. is a throwaway society. Think about things that only have a temporary use, like Ziploc bags. And then we make things that are poor quality, that break, and we have to throw them away and buy a new one. I can't tell you how many DVD players I've bought. The first DVD player I ever bought was about, 17 years ago, and it cost $300, but it lasted about a dozen years, about 12 years it lasted. Now I can buy a DVD player for $25, but it lasts about a year. So that's pretty crazy. And then we just throw it away and filled up the landfill. There's a lot of people who trash pick for a living in other countries. This is considered an open-air landfill. Sometimes they're called dumps. Now, we used to have a dump in the United States, and then we found out they were not very sanitary. In developing countries, they still have open-air landfills, and they attract pests and diseases that are present in there. But the positive side of an open air or a dump is that because you're exposed to air, you have aerobic decomposition and you have rain, and both speed up decomposition. In our current landfills, we remove the air because we put layers of dirt and other kinds of materials, and we squish down our trash. So we remove the air, and so it's anaerobic digestion, which takes way longer. And then also we don't allow much rain to permeate, which slows down decomposition as well. So that's the positive parts here of an open air landfill. The pests and diseases are, and it's an eyesore. That's the downside of an open air landfill. On 652, we have a picture and a caption explaining for you how we build a sanitary landfill. And here's the law. RCRA is the law that designates how a landfill should be built. So first of all, we protect our aquifers from toxins in our landfill by putting a liner. It's a hugely thick plastic liner. It's actually not huge. It's actually kind of thin, but it has absorbent material, kind of like what a diaper has inside, very absorbent material. So if there is any leaks or whatever, the liner will absorb the leaks. And then sometimes we have some levels of gravel and whatnot. And then we layer the trash in the landfill in a very specific way. And we put pipes in here to collect something called leachate. So these are leachate collection pipes down here. And leachate is basically toxic fluid produced from the decomposition of trash in the landfill. It's a mixture of all nastiness. Leachate, if it gets into your groundwater, can contaminate it and then can mess up your drinking water supply. So we collect the leachate pipes and then we treat it here in a wastewater treatment plant. Digestion, anaerobic digestion, also produces methane. And so we take that methane gas and we can actually burn that methane gas and generate electricity from it. 653. So a sanitary landfill, again, is lined in heavy clay and plastic to prevent leachate from contaminating groundwater. So we have collection pipes that remove the leachate and then trash is layered. And then methane, produced by bacterial decomposition in anaerobic conditions, is removed by pipes and sometimes burned for electricity. We take closed landfills and we turn them into parks and golf courses. Our disadvantages to a sanitary landfill is that it's dry, anaerobic, and so it's slow to decompose. Liners can be punctured and leachate can contaminate your aquifers, and that's a problem as well. Turning the page. All right, so what is the component of our landfills? So here we have a scientist, our garbologists, who studies the waste that we generate and finds out, are things really decomposing in a landfill? So here are the 4 bullet points of what he found out. There's not much rot. Things are really not decomposing in a landfill. There's a lot of paper rules. Plastic packaging, it really is no problem. It's only about 4.5% of the landfill content. And then there's also poison in small bottles. There's a lot of toxic wastes from things like old nail polish. Kind of crazy. Turning the page. 656. Sometimes students ask, well, why don't we just burn it instead? And we do that in some parts of the country. We take the trash, we burn it, and we generate electricity the same way you would do to burn coal. All right, so we can produce electricity. It's considered biomass electricity because most of it, like paper, comes from a tree, which is biomass. However, it pollutes the air in some pretty nasty ways. Particulates, VOx, and heavy metals. The plastics we burn, the other toxins create really awful air pollution, worse than fossil fuels. We can put scrubbers on to help capture that pollution. The filters for particulate matter are specifically called baghouse. So this is a term you need to know, baghouse. And again, they're filters to grab particulate matter in a waste to energy, WTE, incineration power plant. So yeah, I don't know why they're called baghouse, but it's a term you have to know. And this whole process of burning trash for electricity is called waste to energy. We've eliminated all but 1 or 2 of these in California because our air quality is already really, really, really bad, that if we were to burn our trash, it would be quite terrible. We would all suffer with lung diseases and asthma. It would be bad. So we don't do this in California because of the horrible air pollution we already have. Source reduction. So what can we do? Well, consumers, to reduce what goes into a landfill, can choose minimally packaged goods by buying in bulk, buying unwrapped produce, which kind of kills me because Trader Joe's is a pretty eco-friendly store, except that all of their produce is wrapped in plastic. Buy and use reusable food containers instead of Ziploc bags. You can buy reusable kinds of things and reuse them again. On page 658, we have some everyday things you can do to reduce and reuse, which is better than recycling. Reducing and then reusing and then recycling. So in order from what's best to least best. Recycling is still great, but recycling still takes a lot of energy. So reducing what you use and reusing a bunch of things is much better. And so be able to know and write about on an FRQ 4 to 5 items from this table. All right, let's talk about a MRF, Materials Recovery Facility. Now, in some places, all of the trash goes through this facility, and people and machines in there sort the trash to divert recyclables. And that way, the trash amount going to the landfill is a lot less. There are plans to build one of these in Santa Clarita, and I think it's been delayed, and I don't remember the reason. But that would be a nice thing to have in our city. There's some other solutions to reduce the waste stream. And, well, first you can see that our recycle rates are pretty high in California. Yay, we're doing good on that. There are a couple of other financial incentives to reduce the amount of trash that gets thrown away. In Seattle, they have something called pay-as-you-throw, which means that you're charged per amount of trash, not a flat fee. Like in SCV, there's a flat fee. You can fill up your trash can and add more bags to it as well, and everybody's charged the same rate. But what if you recycle and you compost and you don't buy things in bulk or with a lot of packaging? Why should you pay the same rate if you're doing all these things? So if you are reducing the amount of trash you use, then maybe you should pay less. And so Seattle does that. You pay for a certain size of trash can, and that is different rates for different sizes of trash can. In California, we do have a bottle bill. You can return bottles for a 5-cent refund, not to our stores, but to our recycle areas. Page 665, we start talking about hazardous waste. And the criteria of hazardous waste is that it only has to meet one of these criteria, by the way, to be hazardous waste. Ignitability, you can catch on fire. It can be corrosive, like acids. It can react with other chemicals or compounds, and it's toxic and can harm human health. And this means that it's hazardous waste. And what do you do with hazardous waste? Well, it can't go in the regular trash. Paint can't go in the regular trash. Batteries, because batteries contain lead and cadmium, which can leach into groundwater. Pool chemicals and fluorescent bulbs cannot go into regular trash.